I'm Charles McCain. The book I want to mention right now in review is called U-Boat Killer by Captain Donald McIntyre. This is by far one of the best memoirs by a captain who commanded an escort vessel and later an escort crew in the North Atlantic for the Royal Navy. Not only is Captain McIntyre, does he write beautifully, but he sees, there are things in here where, for instance, he tells his men when they're being attacked early in the war by planes, and they say, "What should we do? We can't really see them, but we just know they're shooting at us." And he goes, "Just fire at the sun." And he said that seemed to help. Drove people off. And he said the plane's off, and he said that was about as effective as waving his hat in the direction that the planes were coming, because they just didn't have the kind of equipment that allowed them at that point to really spot and track aircraft. But the most interesting thing about Donald McIntyre, besides that he was one of the top U-boat killers, is he captured Otto Kretschmer, who was the #1 U-boat ace in World War II. Captured him in 1940, certainly knew who he was, and the story is sort of incredible because there were 2 British destroyers, and they had already sunk 1 U-boat. And all of a sudden, the sonar man says to Captain McIntyre, "Captain, there's a U-boat under us." And he's like, "Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, we just sank a U-boat. There can't be 2 U-boats like right here, sir. I'm telling you, there was another U-boat." No, there couldn't, sir. And he had a lot of respect for this guy, so they go in, and there was another U-boat, and it was Otto Kretschmer's U-boat, and they sank it. Well, they blew the propellers off of it, and the boat surfaced. All the crew got off, except I think for the chief engineer. Kretschmer spoke English. He signaled with his flashlight, "Please pick up my crew." They did what they typically would do if they rescued a crew, which is they would come up into the wind, so the wind would blow them down slowly, the ship toward the people in the water. Picked them all up. Kretschmer, of course, came up last. He was hypothermic, and that British sailor had to go in the water practically and get him. They put him in the captain's cabin. They served rank, even if you were an enemy. And the guy just was exhausted. He slept for 14 hours. The next morning, he goes into the officer's wardroom on the British ship and sort of, quietly sits down by himself to eat breakfast. And you can also imagine at that time these Royal Navy stewards probably serving him and not batting an eye, and because they had cleaned his uniform in the night. And the awkward part is the several crews, as well as the masters of several of the merchant ships Kretschmer had sunk the night before, the masters were in the wardroom themselves having breakfast at the other end, along with the ship's doctor. So Kretschmer's keeping a low profile. I mean, it's kind of awkward. So the doctor looks at him and says, "Excuse me, Commander Kretschmer, do you play bridge?" And Kretschmer said, "Yes, I play bridge. I quite enjoy it." And he said, "Well, this is sort of awkward, but we can't find a 4th for bridge in the entire ship, and they're just us 3. 2 of the people were, of course, the captains of merchant ships he had sunk. But nonetheless, Kretschmer spent the next 5 days while they were steaming back to England basically sitting in the wardroom 10 hours a day playing bridge with these other 3 men. It's an absurd story. It's recounted in the memoirs of Captain McIntyre. And, it's just one of those things that happens, and it's just, you read it and you just want to start laughing, and you can see the awkwardness of the whole thing. But then they're sort of like, well, we're all stuck on this ship together. We may as well play bridge, and that's what they did until they reached port. One of the things that happened is Captain McIntyre had taken Otto Kretschmer's binoculars. German binoculars were battered. Some years after the war, McIntyre invited Kretschmer to dinner at his home. Kretschmer went, and McIntyre, at the end of the dinner, said, "I think I have something that belongs to you, Captain Kretschmer." At that time, I think it was Admiral Kretschmer in the West German Navy, and he brought him out and he gave him his binoculars back. But this is quite a fascinating book. I give it 5 stars. U-Boat Killer by Captain Donald McIntyre.